President Bush in particular, Don Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, Vice President Cheney, even occasionally Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, giving these very aggressive speeches defending the administration's policy in Iraq and attacking the Defeatocrats, that's Democrats. You like that, Defeatocrats?
I'll get to that.
Anyway, attacking them for wanting to pull out of Iraq and how horrible that would be.
Bush said this in that speech to the American Legion. Watch.
There are some in our country who insist that the best option in Iraq is to pull out, regardless of the situation on the ground. Many of these folks are sincere and they're patriotic, but they could not be more wrong.
Look, I think he's absolutely right. They could not be more wrong to pull out of Iraq prematurely. I mean, it would be a disaster. But that was the high-minded good cop side of this thing. Defeatocrat is part of the hardball, tough line, tough cop kind of approach, and that's gonna be happening all up and down the line. I mean, here's an example of it from Don Rumsfeld. Watch.
It was a time when a certain amount of cynicism and moral confusion set in among Western democracies. When those who warned about a coming crisis, the rise of fascism and Nazism, they were ridiculed or ignored. I recount that history because once again we face similar challenges in efforts to confront the rising threat of a new type of fascism.
I mean, he accused the Democrats in some and the press of being appeasers. Now, appeasers is a word that was used during, before World War II. There were people who thought you could get along with Hitler. That's what appeasement was. It's also freighted with a lot of Cold War baggage when, during the Truman administration, at the start of the containment policy, right-wing Republicans accused Dean Acheson and other people of appeasing communism. That's the context. It's a tough word, and what the Democrats are practicing is dead wrong, but it's not appeasement. They are not saying that if we get out of Iraq early or if we undermine the NSA spying program or something like that, that Osama bin Laden will like us and stop attacking us. They want to kill Osama bin Laden, too.
Mm-hmm. Look, I agree. It's not appeasement. That's not what it is. But here's what it is. And this is what I think Rumsfeld was alluding to. The naivete or the state of denial or that we saw back then with so many Brits and American isolationists about the real threat that Hitler and Nazis posed, we see now today with a lot of Democrats and liberals who don't seem to recognize the threat that Islamic jihadism poses. It's not something to be handled by a little bit of finger pointing and law enforcement, but they don't get it. Fortunately, back then, there was a Churchill and there was an FDR. Tough guys who recognized the threat and took it on when others didn't want to. And the problem now for Democrats is there aren't any Churchills or FDRs among their group. Now, well, maybe Joe Lieberman, but that's about it.
Yeah, look, what the Democrats, I'm not saying that what the Democrats are doing is in any sense right. Here's Chuck Schumer's response to Rumsfeld. Watch.
What Donald Rumsfeld should have done is told the American Legion what the administration's plans are in Iraq. Things seem to be getting worse and worse and worse. He had to make the link between Iraq and the war on terror, which many Americans, as the polls show and as just anecdotally, and just as logic dictates, are doubting.
And when Congress comes back, what the Democrats plan to do is have a quote-unquote no-confidence vote about Don Rumsfeld. That's playing politics just the way Defeatocrat is. Here's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that the people in the country will see this terrorism issue as trivialized, as just politics, when in fact Bush is right. Nothing could be more serious. I mean, this is for the future of civilization. If we lose in Iraq, we're going to have a future in which it's really true that Islamic dictators armed with nuclear weapons are going to dominate the Middle East. Nothing could be more dangerous, and that's what the public needs to keep in mind, and not have the idea that this is just some sort of political spat.
Well, that was well said, but I'm not worried. I think they'll recognize how serious it is. The public will.